True allure doesn't come from beauty, it comes from stillness. You will think beauty is what draws people in. The hair, the lips, the symmetry. But beauty alone is noise, and noise fades. True allure doesn't come from beauty, it comes from stillness. That quiet, unshakable center that some women carry like a secret flame. It's not something they show, it's something they are. Stillness is what happens when a woman no longer performs. When she stops reaching for validation as if her worth were a prize someone else could grant. It's what rises after the chaos of trying to be enough for everyone, when she finally turns inward and meets the silence she once feared. That silence becomes her power. Most women are trained from girlhood to be visible, to smile, to please, to charm. The world teaches them to perform, to keep moving so no one notices the trembling inside. They learn to equate movement with worth, attention with love. Yet what they do not see is that in this constant motion, they lose their gravity. They float in the expectations of others, light, decorative, disposable. Stillness, on the other hand, terrifies the world. Because a still woman cannot be manipulated. She is not chasing, she is observing. She sees through the projections of others, the fantasies men cast upon her, the envy women disguise as advice, the cultural myths that whisper she is not enough unless she is adored. She sees them all, and instead of reacting, she remains. In Jungian terms, stillness is the woman who has met her shadow. She no longer runs from the dark within her, the jealousy, the rage, the longing. She sits with it. She listens to the whispers of her unlived lives, the versions of herself she abandoned to fit in. And by embracing them, she becomes whole. Wholeness is magnetic. Not because it demands attention, but because it emanates calm authority. When a woman has integrated her darkness, her light no longer needs to scream. It hums, quietly, confidently, like the earth after rain. Men feel it, even if they cannot name it. Other women feel it too, some are drawn, others are threatened. Because stillness disrupts the game everyone else is playing. Imagine a world where most people live in reaction, always defending, always proving, always seeking to be seen. Now imagine a woman who no longer plays by those rules. She doesn't rush to explain herself. She doesn't justify her choices. Her energy doesn't leak from her eyes, searching for approval. Instead, it returns to her, gathering like water into a deep well. That's what stillness feels like. There is a particular kind of silence that comes not from emptiness, but from fullness. A woman who has met herself completely carries that silence. It's not the silence of submission, but of sovereignty. It's the silence of a woman who has stopped fighting reality, who no longer begs the world to see her worth because she already knows it. This kind of stillness changes everything, how she moves, how she speaks, how she looks at you. Her gaze doesn't demand, it witnesses. Her voice doesn't tremble, it lands. She no longer seeks to convince anyone of her value, because her very presence testifies to it. And here lies the paradox. The moment she stops performing for love, love begins to follow her. When she no longer chases attention, she becomes impossible to ignore. When she stops striving to be desirable, she becomes unforgettable. Because real allure has never been about decoration, it's about depth. It's the invisible gravity of authenticity. The Stoics spoke of this kind of power too. Seneca wrote, "He who is brave is free." For a woman, stillness is that bravery. It is the refusal to let her emotions be puppeteered by the world. It is the quiet defiance of remaining at peace when others would demand her reaction. Stillness doesn't mean she doesn't feel. It means she feels everything, but doesn't let those feelings drag her away from herself. She lets them rise and fall, like tides, knowing they are not the truth of her being. They are weather, she is the sky. To reach this state, a woman must pass through the shadow. She must meet the parts of herself that long to be chosen, the wounds that still whisper, "You are not enough." She must stop seeking the mirror that flatters and instead face the mirror that reveals. That is where the work begins, not in changing how the world sees her, but in changing how she sees herself. Stillness is not a performance. It's a reclamation. It's what happens when a woman stops trying to be interesting and becomes interested in her own soul, her own silence, her own becoming. Stillness, when it finally takes root in a woman's soul, does not arrive gently. It begins as a collapse, the end of the performance, the quiet death of 1,000 masks. There comes a day when she cannot smile through the noise anymore. When every attempt to prove her worth feels hollow, and the exhaustion becomes sacred. That exhaustion is not weakness, it is initiation. It is the psyche's way of calling her home. The world does not honor this descent. It calls it failure, depression, withdrawal. But in truth, it is the soul's winter, the season when the external fades so that the internal may awaken. The woman begins to feel an ancient pull inward, to the realm Jung called the unconscious. It is a dark, strange, fertile place where her forgotten selves still breathe, the wild one, the silent one, the untamed one she silenced to survive. She begins to sense them in dreams, and sudden emotions that have no name, in memories that surface like ghosts. She may resist at first, terrified of what she'll find. Because the shadow is never polite. It shows her where she's been false, where she has betrayed her own soul for belonging. It confronts her with the truth that much of her so-called love has been fear in disguise, fear of abandonment, fear of invisibility, fear of being too much or not enough. Yet if she can stay still long enough, something remarkable happens. The monsters in the dark begin to speak, not to harm, but to reveal. Each shadow carries a fragment of her power, a part of her that was exiled when she decided to be acceptable. Rage becomes clarity. Envy becomes aspiration. Sadness becomes depth. Slowly, the woman learns that nothing within her is truly an enemy, only an orphan waiting to be reclaimed. In that reclamation, stillness grows. It's no longer a posture, it's a presence. She stops reacting to the projections of others. The man who once made her question her worth now becomes a mirror for her boundaries. The friend who competes with her becomes a mirror for her own insecurity. The criticism that once shattered her becomes a mirror for her attachment to approval. Every wound, every discomfort, becomes a teacher. There is power in that neutrality, not apathy, but mastery. The ability to observe without absorbing. To see clearly without being consumed. To feel deeply without losing center. This is the essence of stillness, awareness without reaction. From a Jungian lens, this is the beginning of individuation, the sacred process of becoming who one truly is, beyond the roles and the masks. For a woman, individuation often means dismantling centuries of inherited programming, to be pleasing, to be accommodating, to be safe. But safety is a cage when it comes at the cost of the soul. Stillness breaks that cage. It is what emerges when she chooses authenticity over approval, truth over comfort, essence over image. In this silence, she begins to hear the whisper of her own anima, her deep feminine nature that has always known the way. It speaks in intuition, in symbols, and sensations that words cannot capture. It tells her to slow down, to stop performing, to listen. The modern world, built on speed and noise, cannot comprehend this. It praises hustle and confidence, yet fears depth and quiet power. Stillness appears as mystery, and mystery unsettles the ego. Because mystery cannot be controlled, it must be felt. So, when a woman begins to live from stillness, the world often reacts. Some will call her distant. Some will say she's cold or arrogant. Others will try harder to pull her back into the game. But she doesn't bite the bait. Her silence is not absence, it's sovereignty. She knows that attention given to every noise drains the energy meant for creation. The still woman creates not from striving, but from alignment. Her actions are deliberate, her words carry weight, and her presence shifts the atmosphere. She is not louder than others, but the air bends around her. Because in her stillness lies integrity, the unbroken union between who she is inside and who she shows to the world. And yet, this stillness is not static. It moves like the ocean, calm on the surface, but filled with unseen life below. It is both soft and immovable, compassionate and discerning. The more she embodies it, the less she needs to prove anything. Her beauty no longer lives in her face or body, but in her energy, that quiet, grounded radiance that no camera can capture. To the untrained eye, she seems ordinary. But to those attuned, she is unforgettable. Because stillness, once found, becomes its own language, one that speaks directly to the soul. As her stillness deepens, the world around her begins to reveal itself with unsettling clarity. She starts to see that much of what once fascinated her, the chase for admiration, the need to be desired, the thrill of being chosen, were illusions spun by an ego terrified of being unseen. These illusions crumble one by one, and in their place arises a serene understanding: what is truly hers will never require her to grasp. In stillness, perception sharpens. She notices the subtle ways people cling to noise, constant talking, endless scrolling, the compulsive need to prove. The collective fear of silence becomes almost palpable. Because silence exposes truth, and truth is what the ego fears most. Stillness, then, is not merely quiet, it is a confrontation. It strips away everything that is not real. The woman who embraces this silence begins to experience the paradox of true allure: the less she seeks attention, the more magnetic she becomes. It's not a tactic, it's a consequence of alignment. Men sense it instinctively. They cannot quite explain why they are drawn, only that her presence feels different, grounding, mysterious, alive. It's as if she's standing at the center of a storm, untouched by its winds. This magnetism does not arise from manipulation or strategy. It comes from energetic coherence, her mind, body, and soul moving in harmony. In her, there is no pretense to decode, no performance to chase. Her authenticity becomes a mirror, and those around her are forced to face themselves. That is the power, and the danger, of a still woman. She reflects truth. Many will find that unbearable. Some will project their insecurities onto her, calling her distant or aloof. Others will mistake her calm for arrogance. But those who have glimpsed their own truth will recognize her not as cold, but as clear. Stillness is clarity, and clarity unsettles those still hiding behind noise. The Stoics understood this kind of strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." The same is true for a woman. Her stillness becomes her sanctuary, a place no chaos can touch. While others drown in reaction, she moves through life like water, fluid, responsive, but never losing herself to the current. There is a profound beauty in this unshakable composure. It's not about control, it's about rootedness. She feels her emotions fully, the ache of loss, the thrill of desire, the sting of rejection, but she does not let them define her. She allows them to pass through her like wind through trees, knowing that feeling deeply is not the same as being consumed. And something else happens in this space: desire itself transforms. The woman who once longed to be chosen now finds herself choosing, not from fear or lack, but from discernment. Stillness refines her taste, her standards, her energy. She no longer entertains what disturbs her peace. The drama that once fascinated her now feels heavy, unnecessary. She would rather sit alone in silence than share space with chaos. This is when her allure becomes transcendent. She is no longer trying to attract, she simply is. Like a mountain that does not chase the clouds yet remains magnificent, unmoved, eternal. In her presence, others feel something they cannot name, a longing to be as whole, as grounded, as free. Yet make no mistake, this freedom was not given. It was earned, through heartbreak, disillusionment, and the slow, painful shedding of illusions. She has faced the parts of herself that begged to be seen, that chased the ghost of perfection, that feared being too much or not enough. She has forgiven the girl who thought her worth depended on how gently she was loved. In the process, she learned the art of non-reaction, not because she is numb, but because she now sees the futility of constant resistance. She doesn't need to prove or defend, because truth does not require defense. Stillness is the natural state of one who trusts her own value. And perhaps that is what makes her truly captivating, not her face, not her words, but her energetic quiet. In a room full of noise, she is the silence that draws every eye without demanding it. She doesn't sparkle, she glows. She doesn't persuade, she embodies. Stillness, then, is not the absence of motion but the mastery of energy. It is knowing when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait, when to walk away and when to stay grounded. It's the deep, intuitive rhythm of a woman in harmony with her essence. And once she finds this rhythm, she will never again chase what disturbs it. Stillness changes not only how she moves through the world, but how the world responds to her. Once, she lived like an open-wound, raw, hungry, easily swayed by emotion. Now she moves like the tide, guided by an unseen moon within her. Nothing external dictates her value anymore. Compliments no longer intoxicate, criticism no longer wounds. Praise and rejection lose their polarity because she no longer builds her identity upon either. In this equilibrium, her presence begins to communicate something beyond words. It says, I am enough, even when unseen. It says, I no longer barter my peace for attention. It says, I am whole, even in solitude. And yet, stillness is not isolation. It does not mean withdrawal from life, but a deeper participation in it. For the first time, she begins to see clearly the sacred rhythm of things, the way nature moves without hurry, the way flowers bloom without seeking applause. She realizes that everything alive holds stillness at its core, the mountain that endures storms, the ocean that holds depth beneath its waves, the tree that stands tall yet bends with the wind. Stillness is not absence, it is essence. From this realization comes compassion. She begins to see that most people's chaos is not cruelty, but confusion. Their noise is a symptom of disconnection. And rather than condemning them, she simply chooses not to join the storm. She can love without losing herself, care without controlling, listen without absorbing. Her empathy becomes boundaried, her kindness deliberate. In psychological terms, she has transcended projection. She no longer projects her inner voids onto others, nor does she absorb the projections of those who seek to define her. Where once she needed reflection to exist, through validation, desire, or comparison, now she stands as her own mirror. She reflects herself to herself. That is the true meaning of inner union, the reconciliation of the seen and unseen, the conscious and the unconscious, the light and the shadow. The Jungian path calls this individuation, the birth of the authentic self. For the woman who has embraced stillness, individuation is not an intellectual idea but a lived experience. It is the quiet knowing that no role, lover, daughter, mother, achiever, can contain her entirety. She wears them lightly, as garments, not identities. When one is outgrown, she sheds it without resistance. Because stillness has taught her the art of letting go. There was a time when letting go felt like death. The end of a relationship, a dream, a version of herself, it used to shatter her. But now she understands, endings are not loss, they are space. In stillness, she learns to trust the void. What once felt like emptiness now feels like potential. The same silence that once frightened her now nourishes her. From that silence, new things emerge, ideas, creations, intuition. She becomes magnetic not because she tries to be, but because her energy is uncluttered. There is no desperation, no distortion, no disguise. She no longer attracts from lack, but from abundance. The world senses it. Opportunities unfold. Relationships deepen or dissolve, but each movement feels guided, not grasped. This is the paradox of true allure, it is the byproduct of peace. When she is no longer driven by the hunger to be seen, she becomes luminous. Her beauty feels ancient, beyond fashion, beyond youth, beyond perfection. It's the beauty of truth resting comfortably in its own skin. She might walk into a room unnoticed at first. But the longer she stays, the more the atmosphere changes. Conversations slow. Eyes turn. People feel her without understanding why. It's not what she wears or how she speaks, it's what she withholds. In her restraint, there is mystery, in her quiet, there is power. Men who are used to conquering become uneasy in her presence, because she cannot be conquered, only met. She offers no chase, no performance, no illusion to pursue. She simply stands in her being, and that being commands reverence. It's not arrogance, it's alignment. It's what happens when a woman stops trying to be chosen and starts choosing. This is where her magnetism becomes sacred. Because now, attraction is not about desire alone, it is about recognition. The man drawn to her must meet her at the same depth, or he will fall away. Her stillness becomes both filter and mirror, allowing only what resonates with her truth to remain. And through it all, she stays unmoved, not rigid, but rooted. She understands that her peace is her greatest possession. That to guard it is not selfish, but wise. For stillness is not the absence of emotion, it is the mastery of energy. The woman who embodies it becomes timeless. Her allure doesn't fade with years, because it was never born of youth, it was born of awareness. There comes a moment, subtle yet irreversible, when stillness transforms from something she practices into something she is. It ceases to be a refuge she retreats to, it becomes her nature. In this state, she no longer asks, "How should I act?" but rather, "What feels true?" Every movement, every word, every choice begins to flow from a center that no longer wavers. Her life takes on the texture of quiet power. She walks through spaces once filled with tension and feels no need to perform. Where she used to fill silence with nervous words, she now allows silence to speak for her. People sense it. They may not understand what changed, but they feel it, an invisible weight, an unspoken presence that commands both respect and calm. This is the energy of integration. In Jungian language, she has united her inner masculine and feminine, her capacity for action and her gift of receptivity. She no longer swings between overgiving and withholding, between chaos and control. She acts when moved by conviction, and she waits when wisdom calls for patience. The two forces dance within her now, balanced, fluid, whole. In this wholeness, she becomes her own protector. No longer seeking safety in others, she becomes the ground she stands on. Her boundaries are not walls, they are expressions of self-respect. Her no carries the same grace as her yes. She no longer fears being misunderstood, because her truth no longer depends on being explained. And yet, paradoxically, this stillness does not isolate her, it connects her more deeply. For when a woman no longer grasps for love, love begins to flow toward her naturally. Her energy is no longer heavy with expectation, it is spacious, allowing others to meet her freely. The right people feel at ease around her. The wrong ones feel restless, exposed, unable to play their usual games. Stillness becomes her silent discernment, she doesn't need to judge, her presence reveals. There is something profoundly spiritual in this transformation. It's as if she has come home to a temple that was always within her. The noise of the world continues, but it can no longer enter. She begins to see life not as a series of battles to win, but as a rhythm to align with. Each event, each person, becomes a teacher in disguise. When anger arises, she no longer suppresses it, she studies it. When sadness visits, she no longer fears it, she honors it. She knows that every emotion carries information, a message from the deeper psyche. Stillness allows her to listen before reacting, to feel without drowning. She becomes fluent in the language of her own soul. And in that fluency, something extraordinary happens, she begins to radiate peace. Not the passive peace of avoidance, but the radiant peace of mastery. The kind that soothes others simply by existing. In her presence, anxious hearts slow down, restless minds soften. She doesn't heal by trying, she heals by being. Men who encounter her feel both awe and unease. Because she cannot be moved by charm or conquest. Her interest cannot be earned by performance, it must be matched by depth. She is no longer drawn to intensity without substance, to passion without grounding. What captivates her now is presence, someone who, like her, has met their own shadow and survived it. This discernment makes her rare. Not because she hides, but because she no longer vibrates with desperation. Her silence has become sacred space, and only those capable of silence within themselves can enter it. Her love is no longer a transaction, it's an offering. The world might label her mysterious, but she is not hiding, she is simply uninterested in noise. Her energy has become refined, like gold purified by fire. And every challenge she has faced, the heartbreaks, the betrayals, the disappointments were the flames that forged her. Now, she moves through life not seeking validation but offering vibration, steady, calm, magnetic. This is the final stage of stillness, the transmutation of pain into power. The woman who has walked through the valley of noise and returned with silence has nothing left to prove. Her joy no longer depends on being admired, and her worth no longer trembles under scrutiny. She has learned the art of detachment, not from indifference, but from understanding. She knows that what is truly hers will come, not through pursuit, but through resonance. And that is the ultimate secret of true allure. It cannot be manufactured or performed. It is born from inner peace, sustained by self-awareness, and magnified by grace. Because in the end, stillness is not about what she does. It's about what she no longer needs to do. The woman who has mastered stillness becomes unshakable, untouchable, and free. The world will call her powerful, but she will simply call herself whole. The woman who knows her worth does not chase, she chooses.